going to start here. I'm not quite sure if there has been a problem today or not, or uh, what I'm going to do. I'm just going to start and see if people can actually watch it. As I emailed the association, craniosacral association, I know that you can use either a webinar or recorded or non-recorded as a CPD. There won't be any primary or secondary CPDs anymore. So it will be, if this helps you with the craniosacral therapy, which I know it will help personally, but also to use it with your clients, I would suggest to try it. So I will, well, this is a recorded one, it seems like. I'm sure I can do without the password and everything, hopefully next week, and there will be people participating because it's such an amazing tool. And as I mentioned in the other video, this tool that I'm going to teach today has been used in therapy. So I know that it can be used lying down because the person that deals with unconscious emotion can deal with visualizing, and you are there to deal with it once we can start working on hands-on. It can also be distance healing or distance craniosacral therapy, but with you showing them what to do. So it's an amazing tool for the emotions, and it gives the client so much power that it's really so worth doing this method and learning it. And I'm very excited. I know I will definitely use it with my clients, and it's good to use it. Okay, I'll start with I'll start with everything. I start with having a shower wet light, really connecting to your heart. So roots and ankles really connecting down. So we are very conscious of where we are. Breathing in and out from our belly a few times. And then just imagine to be connected with the cloud of love, unconditional love. So connect to your heart and just breathe at your heart. Just work from your heart all time, wherever you are. Connect your heart with every other midline center connected to your roots. Just imagine that the roots and the ankles from the tailbone connects down to the earth, connects deeply down to the earth, and this beautiful earth energy and unconditional love from the earth comes up through your feet, through your legs, through your hips, up to your lower back, up to front, middle, the entire energetic field, up to your heart. And then imagine that from above, you connect to the sunshine, the light, and that light, that star, it just warms you, it gets you a lot of unconditional love from the sun. So it raises up every morning that question right now on earth, and you are four corners of the earth, it rises up at each time. So get some energy from the sun, from the light, and white light, seven light. This work for you, that unconditional love from the sun and the universe itself, just coming down into breathing at your heart. Just feel the unconditional love for yourself from the earth, from the heaven or sun, universe, all connected to your heart. Now, with all the emotions, before you what method I use, I'm teaching you, just really connect to the heart and keep connected to the heart. Just keep from your diaphragm again, of your roots and ankles, and into the air. And stay there. Now, before we start, and with all um, if, with all these methods anyway, I would like for you to have a safety net, and I would like to teach the safety net so that yourself and also the client, when they go to with with this process, they have an anchoring of safety. So this is like the circle of excellence. Whoever has done the circle of excellence with me, whoever has seen the video, if you haven't, just go back and see the circle of excellence on my website in order for you to know what I mean, and it's worth doing that. So the anchoring of safety. So just think, um, I'm referring just to you, but then that this can be passed on to your clients, of course. So just think of a place in the past or a time in the past that you felt absolutely safe. It can be even your own room now that you feel absolutely safe. For the clients, it can be your room as well. And now when you go to that safe place where you felt absolutely safe at the moment, at that moment, just hear what you heard, see what you saw, feel what you felt, and whatever else is there. And when you really feel safe at that moment, in that time, just decide which place you want to anchor that safety. And I would anchor it on yourself or even on the client so that you can do it when you feel that they're unsafe. If you when we work on hands, just anchor that safety at the top of that feeling on one of your knuckles. And before that feeling goes, you let it go. So we go back again. We go back again to that time of safety. Just go back to that time or any other time, any other place, wherever you feel safe, 100% safe. So go back to that time, feel what you felt, hear what you heard, so see what you saw. And then when you're there, with all those feelings, just multiply that sensation of safety about 10 times. When you are at that point, at that safety place, just again, touch the same knuckle for about a few seconds. And before that sensation of safety goes down, without that in your eyes. So you know, again, we do another one more time. Go back to the time that you felt absolutely safe. You are in a safe place. You felt 100% safe, and see what you saw, hear what you heard, feel what you felt. And when you're there, multiply that sensation about 30 times. When you really, really, really feel safe, touch that nothing and stay in one. 3 seconds before that safety goes out. Now, hopefully you've done it, and let's test it. And so now think of a time that you would be unsafe once you felt unsafe. Just think of a time in the past that you felt unsafe, and um, when you do that, then touch the knuckle and see how you feel. I felt unsafe. Now you can future pace it. So think of an occasion where you would otherwise feel unsafe, and obviously it's the emotion, it's your own feeling. It's not taking away any time that you need to run or there is proper safety or danger. So it's when you know there's only your emotion and, like for example, taking a train before you were first feeling safe, now you might feel unsafe. So think of going on the underground in a future place, you don't know what is going on, feeling a little bit agitated going on the underground. And probably that's something that your clients might get to, might get to. So it's really worth to do that. Okay, now with that little tool to deal with what we need to do next. Now with timeline inappropriate emotions, it's about emotions that are still there for a long time or have accumulated from the first event, that it can be at 3 years old, to the time of now. And if that's event for the brain might have accumulated each event of anger, for example, that we're dealing with anger today, and change each event, and each event became stronger and stronger and stronger until you actually get angry for a very, very silly thing that you think, why did I get angry with that? And that is an appropriate anger. So what we do, it's dealing with inappropriate anger. When somebody comes to you, or even for yourself, it's like, I keep screaming at my son. It's really, really, it's not his fault. It's nothing to do with him. And I have no idea why I get so angry when, blah, blah, blah. So it's those things. And anger is not just something about screaming. It's, remember what we did with the other recording about eating disorders, anorexia, disorder eating. It's about passive anger as well. And that passive anger can become, for a person, it can become depression, it can become unhappiness, and it can be eating disorder, overweight. overeating. It can be even physical pain, arthritis, pain in the joints. So any of that can be an accumulation of the anger or other emotions that we deal with. So it's not just, it can be an autoimmune disease, it can be an allergen, anything that attacks the body. It can also be an accumulation of those emotions and feelings. And I know from my experience, and this is my awareness and my experience with feelings, emotions, that actually feeling and emotions that are inappropriate will consume the person, will actually cause lots of damage. So let's deal with our own right now and just let's get confident with that. So if for whoever, just to explain it a little bit about timeline, what I'm going to do is ask you to know where your now is, and just form a line. And timeline can go through you or outside you, or outside your body, on the side, transverse or whatever, but outside, around you. So if it's through you, it can be linear through you, or it can be linear around you. So what you do is you have to know where your now is. So you write down, first of all, as I said, you write down your now. So I'm not sure that you can read it because it might be. So you write down the now, where your presence at this time. So you know that it's exactly where you are, at this height, at this age. This is the now. And you map it on the floor. And I might not show you, but so I will show you later on where I map it. And then you have the future. So ask yourself, and if it's a client, you would ask the client where the future is. If it's in front of them, through them, and or around them. Yeah. And there is no right or wrong. This is how they perceive their timeline. So, and it's fine. It's absolutely correct. And then ask where the past is. If it's behind them, through them, still behind them, or on that side, wherever it is. And that's their past. Now that you know the now, the future, and the past, what you need to think of an event, the first time that you experience anger. Now that event doesn't have to be a major event or traumatic event. It's just the first time. It can be 0 to 7 years old when you're that child, and if you can't remember the first time, just ask yourself if you were to imagine when the first event of anger was that you learned that, what age would you be? So think of that, or ask your client. Now think of that event and the age, and perhaps the first event at the age that in the past that you thought was the first event. And just put the piece of paper there. So you actually have something to look at. Now, this can be done imagining. So if you can show your client on the floor, or you can, if they have a really good imagination, you can ask, okay, if it's now, you're now on the couch, you're here at this moment, remember where you are at this height and at this age. For the now. For the future, you can imagine if you had a line, where would it be? Is it in front of you or anywhere else? It is through you or around you. And if you were to imagine your past, just imagine what the past would be and have them visualize the past, and then imagine that the first event. And as I said, if they can't remember the first event, then just say, if you were to imagine or know what the first event would be, what would you be? And the first answer that would come, that might be the first event. Yeah. All right, it seems more complicated than it is, but it's very, very simple. So I'll just show you on the floor how I would put my lineage, and my lineage of things is pretty much linear, So I would do my now, my future, my past, and the past event. So I have just lined up, and it's not really linear, that's okay, like that, yeah. And then I would stand in the now and just think of that first event. Now start standing in the now position. Now, how we deal with it is in disassociated. We're not going to associate with the emotion. There is no need for them to associate with emotion, because if there is a trauma there, you don't want them to be associated with it. It's just with emotions, and getting rid of that emotion so it doesn't become a constant thing. And it's not about this, we're not psychotherapists, we're not going to go through the trauma, we're not putting the person through the trauma. So make sure that they are disassociated. So make sure that you are disassociated from it. Now, what you do, you stand on the now, and you have a step out of the now. So you are disassociated from the timeline. Once you are dissociated from that timeline, you go back to your first event, whatever age that was, whatever you were, you just go there backwards, you walk backwards to the first event, and you look above. So you're still disassociated, you're still looking above at whatever age. For example, if I have anger at 3 years old, so I look above that 3 years old above the 3 years old. So hopefully you can actually hear me now, because I'm not quite sure if you can hear me at all. But anyway, you go above uh, the 3 years old, and I would say, and I'm a guru now. My best person guru for my 3 years old Maria, and I would say I would actually see what I can learn from that event. If I were to know, if I am a guru, for example, and I look at that 3 years old Maria, what can I learn from it? So what resources, positive resources, I can learn from that first event or emotion of anger. All learning needs to be positive, and all learning needs to be in order that the young Maria, for example, would move forward. So your unconscious mind can retain these positive learnings so that you can actually use them in the future if you need to. So find one positive learning of that event. For example, if the 3 years old Maria got really, really upset that she didn't get an ice cream, for example, and parents send just mentioned, well, unless you eat your dinner, you're not going to have the ice cream, and she made a tantrum, and parents sent her back. Now, what would you say to that 3 years old? What's the learning, the positive learning there? So I would say, well, if we all do what we can with the resources that we have. So, and if you, for example, would eat your dinner, the healthy dinner, you would have been able to have the ice cream and therefore be okay. And so even though it felt like was unfair, your parents were doing the best for you because they wanted you, as they wanted you to grow and be healthy. And they knew at that time that if you had only the ice cream, you wouldn't eat your dinner, and if you didn't eat your dinner, you wouldn't be healthy. You would just eat sugar and just milk. So that's the first learning, and that would be a learning. If, for example, I would say, well, okay, what else? This is the first learning. It's best to have at least minimum of 3 key learnings. So I would ask, okay, that's good. What else? Is there anything else? And I would say, okay, I would say to the little Maria that actually what I learned is that sometimes there are rules and regulations, and we have to follow them in order for us to be healthier and good. And so even though it sounded like it was a harsh thing to do, at that time, that was, you had to follow some rules anyway. And that's the second key positive. Now, remember, all the key positive has to be in a way that the little Maria would move forward without holding on to that anger at that time. The other key, and then I would ask him, what else? After Maria would come up with that, then I will ask, okay, what else? Is there anything else? And I would come out with, okay, yes, if your parents did love you, that I learned from that event. Your parents did love you unconditionally and were thinking of your health, and even though you thought they were being unfair and harsh, the next day they did give you, your ice cream after dinner. So that's what we do. And if there is only 1 or 2 learning, that's fine. If the client or you yourself cannot think of any good learning, then that's fine. Then once you've done that, go back, way back in the past, way before the first event happened. And if it happens at 1-year-old or 3-year-old, just make sure you can go into your mom's belly at about, maybe even on the journey, on the first time of conception, when you are an egg, a zygote or a cell that is traveling. So there are not that strong emotions then from you or your mother, for example. So it's just to do that and stay there, and then it is all about your imagination. Okay, this is another NLP method. It's all about neurological, and your unconscious and conscious. So whatever you think and you imagine is about your unconscious um, and conscious getting on together. Okay, so let's say that from that position, where position you are way before the first event, you look at events now with all those new learning. You look at events and see if that emotional anger is still there. Now, if it's gone, that's brilliant. If it's not gone, it might mean two things. One, that you have to learn, there's another positive learning that you have to have, and therefore you have to go off the offline still, go off above and see what else that young person needs to know or needs to learn from himself, from that key event. Or the person is associated into no, because sorry, it's if the person actually is not the first event, it might be that that event, the first event was something earlier, so they might need to go a little bit earlier than that and imagine that there is an area. Again, I will put it in the notes if somebody doesn't get rid of the emotion, but for now, let's assume that emotion is gone. Now, if that emotion is gone, again, uh, go on associated on the timeline on the first event. So you actually on associated with the event. That's only if the anger of emotional anger is not there on the first event. So and see how you feel there, how those free learnings that you had have how's that? If there is normal anger, then that's brilliant. So go back again to the way, to the before, way before the event, the first event. Step out again on the timeline, off the timeline, disassociated, and then walk back to the now as slowly or as quickly as when you stop to any of the events that you still remember, that you felt very, very angry, that you need to stop, that comes to mind, and stop at these events with these 3 key learnings from the first event, and see how you can add or how you deal with that event and see what happens. Then go to the next event, strike again disassociated as a goal with those 3 learnings, and use those 3 learnings in each event, and more learnings if you need to, as long as you don't have that anger and stuff until the now. And I would work, because of the frustration that is all around, the anger that is all around, I would work with the frustration of the now as well, the current situation, and still off the line in the now, and say, okay, what can I learn? What can I bring with those 3 learnings, 3 positive learning that I had in the first event? Can I use it here? Is it possible to use it here? Whatever it is that you learn. Once that is done and you are in the now, just step into the now, into the timeline. And now think of that old event again from the now, and see if there is any still anger, emotional anger there. If not, again, future pace. If, for example, in the future, something of a similar event like the first event or any other event that you had happened that would cause in the past anger, just see if with those pre-learning how you feel. You know, just go walk towards the future, whatever it will be, towards the future, stay in that and say, okay, this might happen. For example, I said the anger of somebody pushing through the queue, for example, in the past would have caused a lot of anger, many people. Um, and I know that sometimes I do. So see if you go there and say, okay, um, that person, you know, has done that. Uh, would I? What my guru? What my, you know, key learnings, free key learnings have taught me, and just use them and see how you feel, and then come back. So this is, as I said, it seems more complicated than it is. Once we do it more often, it will be good. You know, you will get used to it, and you will be absolutely great. So obviously, for some reason or another, there are people not asking questions. But if you do want to ask these questions after you've seen the webinar, do ask a question. Do email me, and I will ask questions. Whoever wants to have similar drawing, I don't know if you can see it actually, similar drawing for these with the actually duck on it to see it. But it's just a very simple explanation of that timeline. So, and if you want the notes, I can email you. Again, if you want the CPD, once you watch this video and you understood some of the things that can be used with your craniosacral therapy clients, do ask, as you can have a CPD even just by looking at the webinar or watching it recorded. So it's a good news in that way. Eventually next year, you know, I will see what happens, but this will be done in a full thing, and there will be more resources there, more active that we can do. Right now, in this moment, this is a gift for you, remember, and use it, try it, and see what happens. I'm looking forward to see people that have tried it, what will happen. The next one, it will be exactly the same thing, but with the sadness, which is the next emotion after the anger. And this is the order is for a reason and has to be in this order. Yeah. For some people, anger might not be an issue, but it might be sadness. Some people might be something else, but then it can be eaten by the anger. So I would start with the anger first, like is suggested in order, and it works really, really well. Thank you very much, and hopefully you enjoy this video, and speak to you soon.